going to tell you right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom, you're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support. Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. We've got our co-host here today, Jan. Why did I call you Jan? Jane. It's UFO Jane. I was trying to transition from Jane to we won't be having rather here today. He's feeling under the weather. He got his booster shot yesterday, and he's absolutely destroyed. And that's funny because, well, it's not funny, but the exact same thing just happened to Michelle. Yesterday, she was completely she had to call out sick because she got her booster the day before. So apparently it knocks you out. So if you're going to do it, I would maybe recommend a Friday afternoon if you don't want to miss work. If you want to miss work, maybe do it on a Monday. I don't know.
Well, shoot. We hope Rather feels better.
Yeah.
Bummer. But
it's a bummer. I'm sure he'll feel better. He'll probably be better by tomorrow. But it sucks that he's not here today because we've got a really fun guest. But before we get to our guest, of course, I want to remind everybody that this show is available on Spotify and iTunes. As soon as the show is over, we upload the podcast. So please leave us a rate and review. It goes a very long way to making sure that the podcast continues to grow. It is amazing how much the podcast is growing. It's unbelievable. Also, I want to say thank you to the moderators in the chat. Thank you for keeping it clean and cool. Everybody, hello in the chat. If I don't get to all the comments right now, it's because I'm running a lot of this stuff here by myself since Rather's not here today. Jane's here. Jane's here as well. So hopefully we'll get to as many as we can. If we do have ways to support the show, of course, we've got our Patreon, as you saw at the top of the show, and we've also got super chats open. So if you got a question that absolutely 100% must be answered, a super chat is a great way to get our attention. We'll be saving questions for the end of the show, including super chats. So if you do have questions for Dean or Jane or myself, go ahead and ask them, and we'll make sure that we bookmark them and read them at the end of the show. Other than that, check out the links below for our merch and also for Jane and for Dean Alioto, who is our guest today. All of their links where you can find their work are in the description below. So check that out. And then, of course, want to remind you guys and say thank you to the KGRADB family. We stream there every Friday from 1 to 3 p.m. So with all of that out of the way, thank you all so much for being here, man. I'm excited for today's show. Jane, I didn't know that you and Dean knew each other, so that was a nice little surprise.
I interviewed him, I don't even know, maybe Dean remembers, but it's been a few years, and then got to run into him in person at an Alien Con event one time back when events were happening. Normal. Yeah. So, cool. We go a little back, so it's super fun to catch up with him. And
awesome. Well, if you haven't heard of Dean Alioto, he is a filmmaker, director, actor, producer, writer. He's done it all. I've looked at his IMDb, very impressive, especially considering we probably live in the same town. So I felt some of this with our email correspondence. I was like, yeah, that sounds familiar. No problem. When it comes to auditions or meetings and things like that. So Dean, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Luis, I'm very, I'm good. I'm good. I don't have COVID. So that's a plus. Everyone. That's a plus.
Right.
A lot, but, it's, all my family and friends are dropping like flies. My nephew got it, and then my brother-in-law got it, and this great mate of mine who's also in the UFO community, he got it. And so it's, the Amacrom, or as I call Amacrom and Finch. You know, it's pretty badass. So anyway, so I'm grateful. So yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a virologist, but it seems like they with each strain, it gets a little less serious. So that's a good thing. Hopefully at some point it'll just be like the flu, where, you know, maybe masks become a regular thing during flu season. And that's okay. That's a good thing for society as far as I'm concerned. Worst case.
Yeah. Well, in Asia like Japan,
yeah,
you know, it's not uncommon to see
it's
people
not
with
uncommon.
masks and stuff. Yeah. So you know, it's kind of it's weird, especially when you work in this space where, you know, we're filmmakers and stuff, and we want to be able to go on set. And the challenge is when to take the mask off, because you'll have lines from the mask. You're about to do a scene, and it's look at these weird wrinkles going straight down here.
Right.
Have you had to stop any? Are you working on anything right now that you've had to stop with all the recent cases, or?
Yeah. I started a documentary because of, in part, actually AlienCon was when I first started filming for this documentary that I'm doing. And because I've worked, you know, my past was doing sci-fi, and, you know, worked in Westerns and done TV and independent films. And so for me, because of my first film and all the craziness that stirred in the UFO community, I got invited for the anniversary of my film to go to the International UFO Congress Convention. So I went there and I started meeting people, and it was the first UFO convention I'd ever been to. And so I had no idea that these people, I didn't actually know what to expect. I knew that I had to present a 75-minute TED Talk type lecture. And so the people that came up to me afterwards seemed very credible. You know, I was meeting people, not only, you know, Joe Average and Jane Average, but also people in the military, you know, doctors, lawyers, et cetera, that had had these experiences. And so after about a year of that, it became evident that there was something here that had not been presented, I felt, in a way, except for like James Fox and a couple others, that I wanted to see. And I wanted to present the phenomenon in a way that was all encompassing. So I started out thinking, I'm just going to do a feature documentary. It's going to be 90 minutes. I'm going to do 12, maybe 15 interviews, and I'll be done in 9 months. So I'm at 3.5 years right now. And right before the holidays, I finished. It went from a feature to a 3-part limited series. As you guys know, once you step in the rabbit hole, you know, you can't really go half rabbit hole. You kind of have to go full. I mean, you got to keep an appendage out to get grounded, right? But it's deep. And so it just sucked me in. And so with regards to your question, Jane, I started traveling and was in Europe and was in New York and everything. And I got to a place where I had to strip my crew down to the point where it was just me. And so I'm traveling with a 50-pound bag, and I've got this 6K camera and cameras, and I'm going out and do these interviews, and it's just me. So I'm interviewing like Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean, and you know, from him to her to Travis Walton and Michio Kaku and all these great people that don't normally work in this space. Because I should back up and say this is a science documentary. It's not a UFO documentary or alien documentary.
Okay.
The subject matter happens to be about UFOs and aliens.
What makes it a science documentary in particular?
Because I'm talking to scientists and I'm asking them to investigate this with me using the metrics that they would use. And so there are people who range from you know, eyewitnesses and experiencers for sure. And new people that you've never seen before with you know, incredible stories that blew my mind. But I wanted to, because I'd done a lot of science documentaries and stuff for A&E, Bravo, et cetera. I wanted to have that slant and look at it in a credible way that didn't have that thunderous, suspenseful music that, you know, kind of eliciting fantastical, you know, images of whatever. I wanted to keep it grounded and have it present the same drama that is inherent there, but do it in the most grounded way possible, and kind of in a way as a filmmaker legitimize it. You know what I mean by that is like present in a way that the production value would be something that hadn't been seen before. that we would be tackling in a very serious way. So in essence, it's something that's on a spectrum. One end, you have the Dummy's Guide to UFOs and Aliens, for those who have never really partaken of this field, the phenomenon. And then on the other side, you have hopefully the equivalent of the New England Journal of Medicine. So there's stuff for people that are embedded in this and are kind of like, show me something new. There's mic drops in every episode. And then for other people, it's kind of like taking them and holding them by the hand and say, okay, we're going to walk into this. Here's the latest and greatest, and here's what's on the horizon. So, it was something that for me changed me immensely, and I've been at this for a long time, and I had no idea, and so I ended up, lastly, I ended up doing 53 interviews. So I went from 12 interviews to 53.
Wow.
Yeah.
I am curious about this aspect of this kind of filmmaking. Who funds this kind of stuff? How do you get money for it? Where do you, I don't want, without giving your secrets, but I am curious, like, I know when it comes to doing an independent film, say whatever, like an actual film, not a documentary, you can go, there's all sorts of different investors, but with this, I feel like you're narrowing that investment field. So how difficult is that process? I'm so curious about that.
It's not really that difficult. I kind of meditate and I go out to a field and the aliens give me, depending on what my budget is for that year, they give me the money. And so, so far it's been pretty good. Fingers crossed. It's a combination of everything, man. As you know, working in the film business as an independent filmmaker, you start, out looking for people to give you permission to make your project. So you pitch them, and if they like it, they say, okay, we'll do it for this and that amount. I went out and I found an independent financer, a dot-commer, a great guy who happened to be a fan of the genre. So for him, it was very much like, I want to see this thing, because I showed him some footage and what the kind of teaser was and what it was going to be. And he was like, I don't care if, where this goes. I mean, obviously he wants his money back and profit, but at the end of the day, it's like, I want to see this. And so we both kind of aligned on that, that we wanted to see this thing. And so it was that, and then it was, other financing. It's this kind of mix of everything. But the thing that kicked it off was this, main financier. So these things are very, they can get very expensive, and so. You don't do it because you think, oh, I'm going to make a shitload of money at this. Oh, can I swear, by the way, on these?
Yeah, try not to use the F word.
Just keep it.
Yeah. And, well, I mean, they eventually pop on KGRA, and so I try to keep it as clean as I can.
You can't say UAP.
If it happens, you can't. Well, there you go, Jay. Now the FCC's
she just dropped it.
Oh no.
But that's fine.
So we do this because it's curiosity, man.
Yeah,
it's curiosity, which is why I think we were on Martin Willis's UFO podcast that I called back in after I had left, because I got tired of hearing people talk about how like Michio Kaku even mentioned in my doc, he said, why would aliens be interested in us? It'd be like ants. Why would they care? And Dave Foley, actor Dave Foley, comedian, is in my documentary, and he said, because there's entomologists, so that equation doesn't really work. And my take on it is, this isn't an intelligence beauty pageant contest, guys. Right. You don't get extra awards for being more intelligent than other. What would have a superior, if you will, being interested in us is one simple element that all life and life that advances needs as a component of everything, and it's called curiosity. So,
well, I was listening to that your interview on Martin Willis, and I was thinking, do ants have curiosity? Sure, they explore their surroundings, but do they do it out of curiosity, or do they do it because that's their mission is to explore to come back with food for the queen, and that's basically it. They're not like, I don't feel like an ant is going out and saying, wow, look at the surroundings, huh? Ted, check this out. Look at this oak tree. Like, I think it's a matter of leaves, food. But no, I understand what you're saying for sure. I love Dave Foley. I actually work with Dave, and that's where I agree with the comparison. It's like, well, sure, there's people who study ants, there's people who study gorillas, there's people who study all sorts of weird niches, and like people who study UFOs, you know. So it's curiosity, I'm sure, has a big part of it. I'm curious if they're curious. Do you think
if ants are curious?
No, if whatever the phenomenon.
Don't they have cable now?
Yeah. Well, if the phenomenon even uses curiosity or emotions anymore, I'm curious. I like it. I'm curious if they're curious, I guess.
I would think that they would be. I mean, from the thing is, God, there's so much, you know, it's so all encompassing. I mean, that's the thing, you know, as a writer, you're working, and when you're working, you're writing, you're looking at everything. And then when someone talks to you, it's kind of like you start to speak and then editorialize yourself. And it's kind of this thing where there's too much, you know, information. And if you're interested at all in the field, there's a bombardment. You know, again, it's a spectrum. On one side, you have, my aunt saw this thing in the sky one time, and it was silent, and it moved over, and it was big, and that's it. And the other side, you have, you know, the aliens from the moon that have been spraying the planet with COVID, and that's, you know, of course, why we have it. And so the thing is, I would say that based on the behavior of these crafts that have been seen for, you know, hundreds of years, if not longer, but definitely that have been cataloged of our time, let's say, since, you know, the 40s and before. Yeah, they show up, and they've been very curious with all the nuclear arsenals that we have, and so that to me right away is, you know, that's a sign that they're tracking what we're doing. And so, you know, what is the purpose of that? What is the purpose of seeing a craft that, by the way, a lot of people say starts to phase in and out?
Yeah.
And as Dave Fravor said, he looks down, he sees this craft, and the Tic Tac pivoted, the craft moved as if it had its own conscious, like it was a dog that just went, what? Something walk in the room, and look, and took off. And he felt that there was this intelligence, this awareness. And so, you know, if you're in this field, you start to become, you can't help but become like kind of an investigator. But you don't get a degree in there. You can't get a degree in ufology, right?
Right.
I know of.
Not yet.
No, well, not yet. I mean, who knows? In 10
coming.
years, I think it might be. It might be.
UApologist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you
Like
apologize.
apologizing for seeing UFOs.
Phenomenologist.
Yeah.
Jane, I didn't want to cut you off if you had a question.
No, well, so which came first? Was it the interest in UFOs as a real thing, or the interest in filmmaking? So for those, I don't know that we gave you a proper intro, or if everybody knows, you know, where things started.
That's kind of where I was going to go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know, because I know, Dean, you've told this story a million times about the McPherson.
Yeah, but we have to.
Yeah, right. We kind of have to.
We have to a little bit.
You know,
we have to give the Cliff notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should bring my girlfriend on, because she's very good at summarizing this. You know, you tend to get lost in the details. Well, my story began much like Jesus in Sacramento, California. I was divorced, you know, a product of divorced parents. My brothers had moved with my mother away for a few years before I had moved back with them. You know, we'd be visiting and stuff, but I went to live with my father. And so I'm in Sacramento, and as a, you know, from 7 to 9 years old, I just remember always looking out at the stars and wondering what is out there. And there was just something about it, the energy of those sparkling lights, that just felt like there was, you know, like if you're flying over, you know, the planet, you would see sparkling lights, and you just assume that there's something that has turned these things on, so to speak.
You know what I also compare to, Dean? I don't mean to cut you off,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like swimming in the ocean. You know, like being under the stars to me, you get a connection to nature. I don't know, some about just floating in the ocean that is very unique, and it's I feel like it feeds the soul in a way that it does when you gaze upon the stars as well. Because I just did that over the weekend. We went star watching. I was just like, oh my god, this feels so good to do and sit out here under the stars where no cars are passing by for an hour and a half and just taking pictures and looking at just the awe that is how small we are.
It really does. I mean, I think our consciousness travels faster than anything, definitely faster than the speed of light. And so I think we feed off it back and forth. I mean, if you look at, dual creationism, where you're creating this reality, we've all agreed that this is the reality, and I'm not talking about simulation reality, which I go into heavily with the guy who actually created the simulation reality hypothesis, Dr. Nick Bostrom, in the doc. But just looking at how I think we all kind of agree on certain things, and we all, move like a pack. And so I think that we're all having a shared experience, but at the same time, we all get a glimpse of the future, little insights and stuff. And some of these people are sci-fi writers and filmmakers, and other are philosophers, stuff like that. But anyway, getting back, it just became apparent to me that there was something greater than my life. And maybe it was just wanting to escape my life and think of that there was something bigger than my situation. And so that stayed with me. And then I remember seeing the show In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. And he would get into all the phenomena from Bigfoot to Bermuda Triangle, definitely UFOs. And so they got my interest peaked. And I used to always go and hang out at bookstores and just thumb through all the UFO magazines. And I love the idea of aliens and of something just so fantastical we couldn't imagine. And so I was and am dyslexic, and so to a degree, and so it was easier for me to visually take in these things, and I found that I was leaning more towards the visuals than anything else, and the idea of seeing this, what would that look like? That has always stayed with me, that I've been trying to see that. And so when I saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I was like, damn, okay, yeah, that feels like it. And that film is brilliant for three reasons. Number one is the third act in today's movies, if it would be done today, would be the end of the first act. You see the aliens. But this makes you wait until the end. And the second thing is what carried it along was that it was a sense of awe. And you don't get that today in movies. You get a little bit of it. I mean, I thought that there was definitely some of it in Arrival, but it's really hard to come by. And that was the Spielberg magic sauce, right? And then the other thing is there were no villains. There's no villain in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and yet you're riveted. And so that really touched me and affected me. And then when I saw E.T., everything changed for me, because I thought, wow, I'm the screwed up middle kid who dreams of aliens, meeting them. And my mother's raising, myself and my two brothers. Wow, and my head was always in the clouds. I was that nerdy kid who was always thinking about, esoteric, things like that. And so here was a film that came out and said, it's okay to be that way. And we're going to champion that. And we're going to actually celebrate it. And so I remember coming home from the movies and telling my mother at that moment, I'm a filmmaker. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I love Star Wars and Scorsese and everything else, but that was for some reason it. So it's always been kind of embedded, seated in me. And so when it came time to make my first feature film, guess what topic I picked?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was 24. I had to make my first feature because all of my idols had done that before. And so I didn't have, a pot to what in. And a buddy of mine said, hey, I want to be a film producer, and I'll finance your film. And I said, great. And I'd gone to high school with this guy. How much do you have? He says, I got $6,500. And I said, sorry, the only thing I could do with that would be a home video. And so I blew him off, and then I read Communion. And that freaked the hell out of me more than any Stephen King novel ever did. And so I remember I was flying to go pitch, because I'm from San Francisco, originally was born there. I was living there at the time of this. And I remember I was flying to LA to pitch a project. And as I was flying, I looked back and it was dusk. Perfect. I love flying at dusk. You know, the sun's going down and the stars are greeting you, and it's at halfway point. I'm looking down and I thought, what if this is the last time I was looking at the planet and I was being abducted? And so I thought, how can I show this abduction, which I started reading Bud Hopkins and John Mack, of course, Dr. John Mack. And I thought, how could I do that in a way that would be so visceral that you would feel like you're there? And so I had been shooting wedding videos with a buddy of mine to make ends meet. And so I was used to home video and that whole format. And so I co-opted that and fashioned it around a story that's not unlike War of the Worlds or the Kentucky story where the family gets attacked, supposedly got attacked by aliens. And so I blended those in and did the first, apparently, it seems like it was the first
found footage.
First found footage
I
film.
took your honor, your words away. But I was one of those people. I still am not sure it's not a real abduction. I'll have to say, Dean. I think it's such a great video. I watched it, and this is another horrible omission, but I watched it on YouTube way back in the day. That's just how I discovered it, you know, with all the rumor and the forum threads and everything. And so I actually also found, and I know we talked about this, Dean, in our interview, but I found some Japanese television clips of your movie, and they were slightly different than so there's two different versions of the movie, or three different versions. Okay, yeah, good. So I was kind of sleuthed, you know, and found that on my own. And then I think you even did some interviews with that Japanese TV station. So if you want to kind of explain all the confusion around it, I know we talked about it.
Yeah, no worries.
Years ago, but
yeah, to unpack this in no specific order, I had made this thing, and I went out and actually got distributed. And so the distribution company, small distribution company in LA, I called a short while back, maybe a few months later, and this was after me pitching it to everyone. I mean, there were this one company called Vestron, and I think Lionsgate was around back then, and all these big companies, and they all just shamed the crap out of me, man. They told me, don't come back here till you have a real movie. I remember one guy throwing his BMW or Mercedes keys at me and calling me a punk. And so that was my first experience trying to sell
Jesus,
this film.
was he giving you the car and telling you to park it? That's such a weird insult.
Yeah, he was just like, you know, he grabbed the first thing next to him. It was nuts. It was nuts. And so it's a perfect example of, you know, you want to be, you know, it's great to be the first at something, but you don't want to be too early with it. And I was a decade too early. Blair Witch came out 10 years later. So anyway.
What year was this again? Was this 90?
This is
when
89.
you were pitching it?
89.
Yeah.
You were pitching it in 89 and 90 to networks. Yeah. I mean, I can understand, like, oh my God. I mean, just think about what was on TV in 1989 and 1990. The Sopranos haven't even been made yet. Like, this idea of found footage films. And I'm curious, man, do you ever kind of get bitter about, man, this is the guy who first came up with that idea? That's like a Spielberg-esque idea. How much money and how many times that idea has been used and rewritten in different formats, whether it be ghosts, whether it be Blair Witches, whether it be whatever. I mean, does part of you ever go, why don't I get a royalty for that?
I'm still in therapy. I have PTSD over this.
Do you really?
Haunted my life. No, I don't.
No. Okay, all right.
You almost had me.
Because some artists are some like people, that.
Yeah.
No, dude. Here's the thing. Someone was going to come up with this. I happened to do it just as a lark. Again, it was desperation to be a filmmaker, and it was also desperation to show this thing that was terrifying for me. And I make the joke, and I probably shouldn't because I don't want to make light of the experiencer's experience. But it was like, I want to get as close as I can without the probe. And And so this was, as a filmmaker, the best way, to do this, was to hire improv actors and go out in one night and shoot, kind of like 10 Little Indians, this family that encounters this phenomenal thing and what happens, and so.
And there was no script either, right? You said it was like a one sheet, literally, of different scenes and sort of the goal of whatever that scene was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. And the acting is so good, and I know Tommy also we did an interview with Tommy as well, who is an actor in it. And the acting is so good. I mean, there's parts where they're talking over each other and it just feels very organic and scary. Like, you're really part of this family. And that's, just a testament to why the conspiracy theories, ran amok, because it was so convincing. And I know you were probably about to get to this, but I guess it did get leaked, I guess, kind of by itself, the videotape, without without your permission, I guess, technically.
He thought it was burned to the ground, right?
Yeah. Well, I called a few months later to the distributor and said, hey, how's it selling? How are we doing? Because I'm broke, I can use the money. They said, oh, it's like up in smoke. And I remember going, so that means it's doing well, like it's on fire, right? And he goes, no, it literally went up in smoke. Our warehouse burned to the ground, Dean. So it's gone, which meant my main master is gone and all my artwork. And, I kind of looked at it like, wow, that's divine intervention. I guess that wasn't meant to happen. Move on. And I started directing in TV and other things. And so that was it. And then 5 years later, I get a call from this guy, Sean, David Morton, who he's a nefarious character in the UFO folklore, who says, hey, I just came back from the International UFO Congress Convention. Do you know anything about this footage that was found? And I said, dude, what are you talking about? He goes, do you know what's happened with your film? And I'm like, dude, who the hell are you? And he says, okay, so apparently some mom and pop video stores got advanced screeners of my film before everything burned to the ground. And someone, more clever than I guess one could say, edited off the credits and inserted it into the UFO community. So it ended up at the International UFO Congress Convention, where UFO researcher Tom Dongo and Air Force Intelligence retired Lieutenant Colonel Don Ware claimed it was authentic, and it brought the house down apparently. And so Unsolved Mysteries, hard copy, and a show called Encounters all said, what we want to feature this. And so the one joke there was that I said to David, I go, well, Unsolved Mysteries is out. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, it's not called Solved Mysteries, it's called Unsolved. And he goes, not necessarily. And I go, no, dude, I'm not trying to perpetuate any kind of a hoax. I made this so that I could have UFO researchers or fans of UFOs and aliens, the field. It would be a way to kind of, get into it in a way that felt real, this visceral thing. And so that was it. It was never intended to, to be this thing that created this controversy, and definitely not all the conspiracies that would follow later. So, so that was it. And I ended up going on this show, and I think I'm the only filmmaker who's ever debunked their own film. So I went on.
And what was the third? What was the third version? So there was the one where they took the credits out and leaked it as like real found footage.
Well. Those are the ones that I'm referring to. So you have the original.
So you're talking the remake. So you're talking about the. Okay. I just wanted to make sure there's two versions of UFO abduction from 89 and 90.
Original.
Yeah.
There's only one of the original, which is the 68 minute one, I think.
That you shot in 89.
Yeah.
Right.
And then there is the remake for Paramount, the UPN version. And that one has two versions. That's it. There's the 60-minute one, and then there's the 90-minute version. And so it's, I guess, three kind of versions out there. So that was it. I outed myself on this Fox show, and I thought that was the end of my 15 minutes of fame. And then I was working on this crime show, and the head writer said, I heard about this thing, let me see it. And I'm trying to be Spielberg at this time. I'm trying to be, Michael Mann or whatever, whoever was in the day, doing cutting edge stuff. And I said, it's all handheld, dude. You don't want to see this. And also I should mention that the first person I showed the finish cut to, and I didn't have really many cuts. The first version was all in one take, was the casting director whose son was in the movie. And I showed it to her, first person to see it. And she said, I think this is awful, amateur. Everyone's talking over each other. All the things that people now say, wow, that was, ahead of its time and everything, she loathed. And so for the longest time, I kept it hidden. I would never mention it, would never show anyone anything. And so it wasn't until it kind of came back like a boomerang. And so the head writer says, I want to see it. And I go, finally I showed it to him. I think I just showed him like 10 minutes of it. And he said, I can get us a TV movie deal. And so he went to Dick Clark Productions and pitched it, sold it in the room, and then had it at Showtime. And then it went to Turnaround. We ended up making it UPN as our first TV movie. And so, the budget was now 1.25. And because we were shooting in Canada, it was more like 1.7. We came in 500,000, $500,000 under budget. I got the guys from the X-Files to do the Ship and Aliens. And then while we're up there shooting, doing the same thing, except it was scripted. And to be honest, I really dislike that version because it's overlit. The actors were great. They all look really good, a little too good.
Yeah.
So it was kind of the Hollywood version of it. And I begged the executive producers to shoot it in home video, and they wouldn't let me do it. I had to shoot this high-end digital thing. But unfortunately, while we were shooting, and I was going to be doing a whole bunch of TV movies for these guys. So it was like, I cracked the code. I'm in there. That's it. It's great. Unfortunately, everyone got fired at UPN. So what that means is my duration, my time there is tenuous at best. And so they fired me from my own movie. And so that sucked, and they cut it down to an hour, and they brought in someone to shoot more interviews. And that's when they brought in, Stan Friedman and Yvonne Smith, all these great UFO experts that I have a lot of respect for, and then aired it. And lo and behold, it got in the highest ratings for a Tuesday prime time. And so they put more footage and released it again. It did really well. And the head of the network said, that'll never be on this effing network again. And because he had egg on his face. But the foreign version, which I hear still plays, is the full 90-minute version. And unless you live in Europe, you probably haven't seen that version. And that has no music. It's got a few interviews that we shot, but that's it. It's very stripped down, and
Damn. Well, if you could, in the age of remakes, if you could get the right budget, would you like to redo that whole thing and still do it in a VHS style format? Because I know you said before and I feel the same way. I always feel myself gravitating toward the 80s and that feel of the 80s and that analog feel of everything. I mean, I was born in 80s, so I remember some of my earliest memories are records and 8-tracks, and then cassette tapes, then CD players, then iPods, and now everything is downloaded. Which even in my time was like, nobody will ever go to digital music. Doesn't sound as good as a CD, or it doesn't sound as good as the first time you play a record, or real audio files will never download their music. And were they wrong on that? They were way wrong on that. But I'm curious to know, would you ever think about redoing the film if you could do it your way?
Are you referring to the script that I've already written? Yeah,
McPherson primarily, or that idea.
You mean the one that I've already written for the third part?
Yeah.
Yes, I have. There is a third version. It hasn't been shot. But there is. I don't talk too much about it because who knows? You don't want to jinx things. But if you're going to redo something, you better add something, and you better do it in a way that hasn't been done before. And because I started out, I mean, there was a few things that we had that I had done on the remake that hadn't been done yet even after I'd done the first one. One of them was the on-screen testimonial where they turned to the camera and everything. I believe that was the first time that had been done. So there are a few more other things that haven't been done in the found footage genre. I'm not interested in working in that other than what I've done, simply because if you don't add anything to it, who the hell wants to be derivative? And, it's tough enough to make something. And so it's much easier when you're making something that you haven't seen before and you're excited about it, whether it's delusions of grandeur, it doesn't matter. In order to get through the days, you want to feel like you're charting new territory. So there is another, possible version that might happen down the road. It's been great of late because I've been getting, some nice attention with regards to the Paramount Plus Paranormal Activity documentary that came out this past Halloween, and where they called me out as the father of found footage.
Nice.
And so that's great to get that recognition. But it's really, I'll occasionally watch found footage films, and like Blair Witch, I was like, oh yeah, damn, I should have done that.
Yeah, really cool. I mean, I remember when Blair Witch came out, I think it was 96, 97. Mm-hmm. And I will never forget, it was hands down the birth of movie marketing for me, as noticing movie marketing and how they pitched that movie as a real event. And then you go into the movie theater and you watch it, and I remember watching the trailers online, or not the trailers, but whatever the hell they put together on their website, and going, oh my God, I'm too terrified to go watch this movie. That's how good the marketing was on the film. And a lot of folks don't really either remember or talk about it much, but yeah, I could just imagine, I'm sure we're like watching that, you going, oh my goodness, like what? How did mine not work? Like, I feel like me, like I've done films and stuff, and it's like, I just did that. But it's cool that you're starting to get recognized for it.
Yeah. There's a documentary coming out that was done well. It's a UK documentary called The Found Footage Phenomenon, and they get into all that as well. And they interviewed me, and they're very sweet about it. And so people are, coming to it. It's interesting because, like, I've pitched to Jason Blum's company, and every year he was saying during a certain period, because he had done Paranormal Activity, he was saying, I think this has run its course, and there would be places where it had kind of ran its course, but then there would be something new that would come out, like Unfriended or some new way in it. My feeling is that we all, and I like to say as a collective, talking about the filmmakers of Paranormal and of Blair Witch and a couple others, where they did create a new narrative in filmmaking that hadn't been done since I don't know what would be the comparison to, not straight editing or cross-cutting or whatever, but it was a new form of narrative type of filmmaking. And so not still sure how to categorize that, but being a part of that was I'm honored to have been a part of that. So for me, I would watch them and I would go, oh, that's cool. Or give me something more, add to it.
Right.
And so.
Man, that is cool. That is cool. I mean, that's got to feel good. And I'm wondering, did you ever use that as like, here's why you should hire me for your job. I made this film and it fooled an entire community of people because it felt so real, and directors, I can imagine a production company going, oh, that's pretty good, kid. Like, yeah, all right, you can direct their film. Or does that not happen like that?
You would think.
Yeah.
You would think. It never got me any work other than the remake. And the remake was the easiest sell. I mean, we would go in with the studio execs and we would show them the Encounters segment on Fox that they did, the 6.5-minute segment, and they would laugh their asses off. And it was just, we were selling these in the room left and right. So I guess it did work in the sense that it got me to remake that. And then I was going to do a third remake with Mick G, who was the director of one of the Terminator films and Charlie's Angels, and so that almost happened with Paramount their division. I forgot what it was called, their lower budget division that had done all the paranormal films. And then we had a pay or play, or a negative pickup deal, which means that we'll finance it and they'll distribute it. That way, McGee's company was going to get a bigger piece of the back end. And so it was there and it was all set up. And then ultimately the division at Paramount that was doing this shut down 10 months or a year later. And so, just bad timing. But so it has within that space, but outside of that space, they don't make the, equation. And I understand, because it's like saying I'm really good with actors and, improv and doing naturalistic, but where does that translate to another script that I might be pitching that as a fictional thing, a Western or, straight sci-fi thing.
Right. I'm that's my core training is improvising. And so, it's way different than film acting. It's way different than stage acting. It's a whole different beast on itself. So but it's interesting skill to know when you're going to different projects, if and when it doesn't come in handy. I'm wondering, I've always had this idea, and I thought it would be, how hard would it be, do you think, to either get the licensing or what would be, I guess, the hurdles you'd see in a project, something like a Breaking Bad, but instead of, a meth dealer, it's Bob Lazar. It's like this idea of like he's telling his story from his point of view, from high school all the way till, until the whole Roswell story. And that's, you could break that down in like a season arc. But how do you think something like that would be pitchable?
Yeah, I think there's someone who's already
somebody's got, I'm shocked rights. I haven't seen it. Yeah.
It's got to be kind of a satire,
right.
like I, Tonya, or something like that. Not a farce, but a satire where it's played straight and it's this crazy ass thing. That's how I would approach it. But I'm sure that's going to come, at some point. I'm interested in new stories in this. How do you come at this from a different, perspective? And so, no, I think that there's so much. Once you start looking at all the cases and stuff, whether you're playing it straight or, comedic like Men in Black, it's, there's a lot to poach from.
Well, Stephen Greenstreet and I wanted to do a UFO drunk history, a version of the show where it's just, ufologists who come on wasted and tell a story from a famous story from ufology, which would be fun. But Ryan Sprague's in the house and he asked you a question. And he asked, would love to know what it was like for Dean working with horror icon Heather Langenkamp.
Oh, I thought he was going to say, what was it like to work with legendary podcaster Ryan Sprague? Heather, hold on, I got to reconfigure my brain now. Yeah. Peace out, brother, Ryan. So Heather is great. She's awesome. She got kind of roped, honestly, into doing our film because she knew the producer, and her company, she owns, I think it's called ATF Effects Company, and they did it's American Horror Story. They've done the Star Trek films. They did Cabin in the Woods, great films. And so we were using them to help us create some of the effects that we were doing for my film Portal, which Ryan is in. He's got a cameo in it and crushes it. Does a great job. Yeah, he's very funny in it. And so she was great. There was no diva at all because she was working, some of the time helping with the effects and stuff and overseeing all of that. And so because she's married to the guy who runs the company, and she's been running the company with him for years. So anyway, she was great. And I remember my favorite memory of hers is I needed her to scream. And so we have the shot where the camera pans over and she screams and she's reacting to this counter shot that I pan over to this person all done up and he's got holes in his face and everything. And she screamed and our eardrums, almost blew out. And that was on the first take. And she kind of wanted to go again, because she says she loves screaming. It's this cathartic thing, this release. And, you know, she's one of the top. I put her up with Psycho's, you know, Janet Leigh's Scream any day. Really, really good. So I really enjoyed working with her. She was fun. She doesn't take herself serious. She just enjoyed it. And, you know, so she's one of my, you know, most pleasurable actors.
Well, as a, I know that you've never had an experience before, so you know, it's always fascinating to see someone who's never had an experience, sort of be steered toward this topic and really have a deep fascination and respect and love for it. So I know that a lot of your newer work that you're working on now, you know, you're working on a documentary, and it's dealing with the experiencer aspect and how you're enjoying that it's going from a nuts and bolts thing more to an experiencer thing. And that's something that even as an experiencer myself, I really struggle with. I struggle with.
I didn't know you were an experiencer.
Yeah. I've had, when I was 13 at a birthday party, a whole bunch of people saw it, long story short, but it was a pretty wild event. And so I mean, I was a lot of similarities in how I grew up to your, you know, that come from your story, Dean, in that mom was a single mom, you know, loved ET, always found myself at the library flipping through UFO books. And then when I was 13, I saw one. And from then on, I know, but I don't, on this show, I don't want to give anybody answers. I don't want to be anybody's messiah when it comes to stuff like this. And I myself have very deep, not deep, but they're troubles believing some of these experiencer stories. But I heard you talking about, you know, after the UFO con, how you were sort of roped into going into an experiencer meeting. And going into it, you're just like, oh, this is going to be a nightmare. But then coming out of it, you know, you were telling your partner that my bullshit meter didn't go off once. Like, all of these people I felt were being sincere and honest. What was it about that experience? What were some of either the professions, or what was the thing that somebody said where you're like, oh my God, this is really happening?
Well, it was before I had decided to do the documentary. I had just been I knew there was something here, but I needed to come at it in a way that I hadn't seen before, that furthered the discussion and maybe furthered or redirected in a way, maybe another avenue into the phenomena. And so I was invited by Yvonne Smith to come to one of her experiencers support groups. And as soon as I hear support groups and experiencers, I'm thinking, well, this is a sitcom waiting to happen.
Right.
And I think there was a show on Hulu or something that was kind of like that. And,
it was TBS.
Yeah,
it was actually
TBS,
a really funny show.
Yeah. Another really funny show, by the way, is Alan Tudyk's show, Resident Alien.
Yeah.
It's really good. He's actually in our doc as well.
Oh, I love it.
Anyway, so she invited me, and I remember, you know, telling my girlfriend Allie, I'm like, yeah, so I'm going to go to this thing. You know, it should be interesting. And she looked at me like, you know, good luck with that. And so I went there, and I walked in there, and there was about 14 of these people that, for all intents and purposes, it looked like you were getting together with people who were maybe on a HOA, you know, a condo committee, you know, where all the owners would be sitting down and discussing and stuff. And it was a range of people from, you know, late 20s, this woman, Hispanic, late 20s, to someone who was maybe 75, you know, white. All my point in saying Hispanic was that it covered everything. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to see a bunch of, you know, white older people who are being abducted or claim to be abducted, and they're going to be named Bubba, you know, et cetera. It was not. It was, you know, this one woman in her 30s had done a TED Talk. There was a lawyer, a doctor, a chiropractor, architect, a supervisor of Homeland Security. So and as soon as I walked in, there was levity there. And my number one goal here in what I'm doing and what I hope I'm contributing to the UFO space is bring, levity, a little bit of humor, but levity.
Yeah.
Because if you hold something so firm and everything, it's going to snap and break. And so we have this phenomenon. If we're discussing other phenomenons, you could approach those with levity as well, taking it seriously, but just saying, okay, guys, let's see what we have here and let's go about it in a way that's, discovery, which should be interesting, fun. Anyway, they go around the room, they look at me and they go, "You look really familiar." And so they start messing with me as soon as I came in. And I'm like, "No, I don't." And they're like, "Yeah, I think I've seen, haven't you seen?" So I guess it's something they do with those people auditing them. But I said, to them after hearing their stories, and one of the stories I heard knocked me on my ass, which was the guy, this one person, I won't say what he does for a living, but he read a letter. And in this thing, he basically, was trying to reconnect with his father. And so without going into too much detail and respect his privacy, his father ended up being, he did a suicide by cop. And so he, unfortunately was able to get to his father, track him down before he had, passed, and talk to his uncle. And his uncle said, yeah, he wasn't right. He believed that he'd been abducted by aliens. And so that, and he was emotional when he was telling it, and we all were affected by it. And he said, I just wish that I could have gotten to him beforehand and say, no, this isn't, you're not crazy. This is real. I've had the same thing since I was a kid, etc. So there was that. And then there was a major in the Army, 35 years old, who said, I only reached out to Yvonne about a month or two ago. My story is this. And he was like 6'5", big guy. He said, my wife and I and my family know that something's gone on, know what I've been through, but we don't tell our daughters. He has like a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And he's like, I won't, we don't talk to them about that. And that's the rules that he's put in place. And then one morning he's in bed and his daughters run up to him and they show him this picture. And which is strange because it's kind of like UFO abduction. When you think about that, or the McPherson tape, shows him this picture and he looks at it and he says, what is this? And she said, oh, these are little skeleton people that come and visit, my sister and I. And that set him off and he was furious. In fact, he almost had to be held back when he was telling the story. He was so pissed off. He says, I look around and I see that everyone's made peace with this. And he said, screw that. He says, these guys are coming into my home. They're taking my kids now. No way. He was furious. And so that was my first, meeting. I've gone back since then, but it blew me away and I left shaken. And so, Allie was asleep by the time I get home. And she's like, how was it? And I was just kind of a little bit distraught because I said, it's not what I thought it was. And it's something that I have to reconfigure my brain. I have to go from a fanboy to someone who, as a sympathetic, part of mankind, human.
Yeah.
I have to factor in that whether or not this physically happened, it happened for these people and their experience is real. And so you can't fake PTSD, by the way, as John Mack has illustrated. So it was terrifying, to be honest. It was terrifying because I had to really then go, okay, so I'm doing a science doc. How do I get into this? And that was a whole other, journey. So me not being an experiencer, it's like, you could ask the same of James Fox. I consulted on the phenomenon for a little bit and got a chance to go out and see him. And he's not had, he did have, and he's mentioned this before, he saw this orb that came in his backyard. And this little orb moved around and then it was gone. And he said, he knew that he could have gotten his camera phone, but he felt like it was definitely going to be gone by the time he reached and did that. And so, but that wasn't a classic ship, if you will, or an abduction. And so I said to Yvonne, I go, my whole life I've been drawn to this. my first film was this. You know, the thing that might be the most successful thing I've done is this. And now here I am thinking about, you know, this again. And, you know, I said to her, I'm not an experiencer. So, you know, and I've you know, I've done everything shy of regressive hypnosis to see, but there's no missing time. There's nothing there, absolutely at all. And she laughed and she said, Dean, they don't have to knock at your door to reach you, which is a little terrifying, but at the same time, you know, she's like, if they want the message to get across, they're going to use whatever messengers they want. You know, Spielberg also, you know, created the best films on aliens. He's not an experiencer. And so at the level that you are, you know, and others are. So for me, I've just kind of learned to respect that muse. I mean, as an artist, which you are, and Jane as well, we're all interested in, you know, in anyone that someone does, whether craftsmen or whatever. There's many times things come to you and you have no idea where they came. You know, the Beatles will say, the songs just came to us. It was channeling. And way back in the day, the muse used to get more credit, whether it was the muse or something else. But, you know, during Socrates' time and Plato's time, they used to say, wow, that person must have a really great muse. They're so lucky. And then the artists started taking credit for it. I learned early on, you don't take credit for that because I don't know where the ideas come from. So when I think about what's being done and not manipulated, but what we've been co-opted to do, you know, especially in the business, you know, entertainment business, I respect that. And I got to tell you, this project, out of everything I've done my entire career, this documentary has been the most rewarding kind of spiritual experience, if you will, that I've ever had. And as much as I'm burnt and tired, and I want to just, you know, present it to the world, at the same time, I'm going, how do I infuse that into other projects I do? And how do I do it in the scripted, you know, non-documentary things? But it's changed me, you know, for the better, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like I can understand making a film is a process. When do you think this will be ready for consumption?
Right now, it's out. We have interest from some sales agents, and so very reputable companies. So I will like when it's sold and we know when it's going to come out. I'll let you know. At this point, we're literally it just was finished before the holidays, so it's kind of brand spanking new. So
what has been what's been the most difficult aspect of making this project? It's taking you a while. COVID?
Yeah, COVID was a challenge, but to be honest, it was the editing. You know, I'm editing it myself, and which is what I do on all my projects. But on this one, it was funny. When I interviewed Leslie Kane, you know, New York Times journalist who broke the Tic Tac story, I was leaving. I was, you know. This is right before COVID happened, and I was leaving her place, and she said, "You're not going to be in your documentary, right?" And I said, "Well, I kind of have a backstory in it, so I feel like it's probably relevant, and I can talk about how I got pulled into this and that whole journey because I think that's kind of interesting and might be a nice parallel to this, you know. And certainly it's been done before." And she goes, She goes, "You're not going to have a host, right?" And I'm like, well, yeah, I was thinking because that's an opportunity to have a named person, you know, come on screen, you know, and she goes, okay. And all right. So you'd also maybe consider having a narration. And I'm like, well, it's a documentary. Yeah. And she goes, okay. But her point was made. And so the first thing I did is I did the first cut for the movie. And because it was going to be a movie, remember, back then originally. And I'm working on this thing. And I tried doing it, you know, with myself in it and the host and everything, and it just feels pedestrian, man. It feels like I've seen this before. It was nothing new. It wasn't coming out in a way that was as exciting and you know, in depth as the phenomenon itself. And so that's when I felt like something kind of took over. I literally felt like I got pushed aside, And I had this thought in my head, which was, don't think it's bad for the team. So I kind of moved aside and I was like, all right, so you tell me, footage, where you want to go. And then all of a sudden it started reshaping itself. And so first of all, I had way too much footage. And the problem was I would go and interview someone and they would give me one piece, one piece of the puzzle. And then they would say, who you should talk to is this person. And so I would go to them. And then I would think, God, I wonder if animals have experienced what their reaction is to the phenomenon and abductions. And then that would send me. And so it was all these things that I was looking at it, not from typical, again, working in the space during the UFO documentary. And a lot of them are really good, by the way, but wanting to come at it as this exploratory thing that was looking at it through empirical evidence and et cetera. So it all of a sudden became evident that this was a bigger piece. And there were a few questions that I wanted to ask the audience, or wanted to ask the documentary itself, and have those get answered. And it became apparent that they needed to be their own separate thing. And so it has a really interesting format. We cover a lot. I mean, we're at NASA and all over, looking at this from what we know and what is around the corner, but also what would make sense, what would be a logical step. A lot of it was kind of like 2 + 5 is 7, but it doesn't have to be 7. What if we did this and that? And then it just kind of leads itself. So, when I sit down to watch it, I'm just an audience. I don't mean to sound too esoteric, but it was deafening. So, I mean, as far as feeling kind of compelled by this, it was this kind of mission that I was on. In fact, when I used to do a lot of meditations and stuff, my eyelids would flutter when it felt like I was getting too much, energy sometimes. And the whole time for 3.5 years, my eyelids have been kind of like, sounds strange, but have been fluttering. And I've kind of been going, wow, that's the litmus test moving forward when I work on other projects, that I know that I'm connecting to the muse or whatever. So it's really been this great discovery. But it was the editing. That was the longest, aspect of it, was finding the best way to do that and get out of its way.
Right.
So this idea of connecting to a muse and channeling, I guess, UFOs or ETs, there's a juxtaposition though, right? So you were talking about the different experience or testimonies that affected you, and there was the one father that was upset about it and defensive about it, right? It has a negative feeling, I guess, right, about these visitations. Just what is your take on that? And should we be trusting these ideas, right, that just plop into our brain, or how do you differentiate different ideas you have, or the different experience or testimonies, positive and negative?
I've learned through talking to everyone from Alejandro Rojas, Greg Bishop, and even Jacques Vallée, when I met him after my film, the original one, debuted, and Robbie Graham, that it's the phenomenon is, it's none of the above, and it's all of the above.
That's a good answer,
right? Not to be too abstract, but it really is. I mean, the high strangeness that occurs around these, you can't ignore those, and a lot of people like to keep it nice and neat and everything. But look at the Pascagoula.
Yeah, you had it right. Yeah, Pascagoula.
Okay,
I think it sounds right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Pascagoula case. It looked like the Michelin Man, the alien that they described, and you could go, oh my God, well that's BS, but it isn't. That's how it was perceived. And so for me, I give everyone's story weight. I'm a pretty good judge of character, and I've had to be as a director all my career, because I create basically false reality for actors to perform, and I need them to sell that, right? And so as an actor, you've got to be able to believe it 100%. And so for me, and working on these crime shows that I did for more than a decade, I've interviewed convicts, cops, a whole deal, and there's little tells and stuff. Not much gets by me, I think. And so, so the people that do pass my muster, there's so much in there, their experiences, and to break it down, which is where I think where you're going with this, Jane, is it a bad thing or a good thing? That we're having experiences, we're having abductions. And so a lot of the abductees do not want to be called abductees anymore, because that feels like they don't have any say in this. And so when I was young, I was, for some reason, my teens and throughout and up to now, I'm a very spiritual person. And so I would read, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, and look at these religions, these beliefs. I don't even want to call them religions, that have been around longer than anything: Christianity, Catholicism, etc., Judaism. And so they all believe the same thing, which is they believe in reincarnation. And, in fact, it was supposedly in the Bible that, reincarnation, but that needed to be controlled as well. And so here's the question. If you can be reincarnated, what's the purpose of being reincarnated? Is it that you didn't get it right the first time? Or is it that there's karma that you need to pay back for someone who helped you out, or bad karma that you've done? I mean, I don't believe that there's some karma police that show up and, go Rodney King on your ass. I believe that you create your own karma. I believe that you become self-aware, whether it's the moment of passing, hopefully it's before you die, but you want to, pay that back and do what's right. And so I think this is a school. We're all here to learn stuff. And so if we're here to learn things, and we're coming back, and we're setting up certain things for ourselves, like, they believe that, Tibetans believe that you pick your father, you pick your mother, your children, and there's a soul group. Some would say, 15 to 25 people, that you're all going through this great evolution, evolving always. And so if that's the case, and you're able to do that, and there's a belief system here that's been that, and there's testimony of people that have had past life regressions, kids that all of a sudden start playing the piano and they play it verbatim, or they speak another language and they're in Kansas and they speak German, which is called xenoglossy. It's an actual term that can't be disputed. And so, especially the cases that have come out. So if that's all real, then these people who are experiencing this, like yourself, I think I don't park any of my beliefs in one, on one square, but I think that it was an agreement beforehand, that there was an agreement that we're going to do this because either it's to help you guys, meaning us, in the future down the road, maybe with, the hybrid program and everything else, or it's to help them, and we're all part of the same family. And so I think that it's all relevant, and I don't think anything is accidental. I think to say it's accidental is, it's akin to being a nihilist. And there's just too much evidence pointing there. And so the more I was in the rabbit hole here, the more I thought there is a divine plan going on here. And so if they need to do like we do with bears and with wolves, and so any wildlife where we, knock them out and then we tag them, much like, microchip or, the chips that are supposedly used. And then they're free to go, and we observe them, occasionally come and get them again. I mean, that's classic, studying of, wildlife, if you will. And as far as the Prime Directive goes, Star Trek Prime Directive, which is a joke. Every episode, they're breaking the Prime Directive.
Yeah.
Whether they're going back in time, or whatever, but they are. And so I think that the fact that they haven't revealed what the grand plan is, a lot of experiencers will say they believe this, but I've heard so many contradictory theories on it. I don't subscribe to any of them, 100%. But I think that, I think something's going on. And if you look at it, all you have to do is look at how we are and project ourselves out. If we could go to another planet, and if the planet were more primitive, I would hope that we wouldn't, screw up their own plan, life's plan, evolution plan, but that we would hang back a little bit, but we would want to observe and see what's going on. And that's separate from looking at them as being people who were our creators and came and saw this planet.
There are real examples of that on planet Earth today, where there are isolated tribes that, I guess non-isolated. We're pretty tribal, honestly, these days on Twitter, where people have conspired whether or not to contact, and sometimes have made the decision to, and eventually give clothes and things like that. But there's conflicts too in some parts of the world between these native tribes and people going into log and all of that. So there's a real-time example of humans being curious about other humans and not fully understanding each other. I find that so feasible. I did, and sorry, I interrupted your momentum, but I am curious, have you looked into near-death experiences at all? I know that came up on this show. Somebody in the live chat had a question. Have you looked into that at all, and kind of the overlap almost with the abduction phenomenon and some of these ideas?
Dr. Brian Weiss you're talking about, or Michael Monroe, or yes.
I mean, there's a lot of research out there and testimonies.
Yeah, I found myself in several rabbit holes. As a writer, filmmaker, I'm always looking for, ideas. But just as a spiritual person, all these things seem to resonate. At some point you start to form your own philosophy, your own, I don't want to say religion, but your own belief system. And all those factor into it. Definitely, past lives and regression into, connecting with your higher self, if you will. Yeah, I believe that, in all the books, and I've read all of Weiss's stuff and Michael Newton's stuff. It's all, it's the same story over and over. And it's kind of like, here's how I like to look at this. All of us, this podcast included, the agenda of this podcast is to skip to the third act, right? What is the climax of this? What is the final act of what is going on? Well, we're still, at the beginning of the second act, I would say. I don't think we're at the midpoint. Actually, you know what? I think we are at the midpoint. And let me circle back to that in a second. I think that we've now discovered this is going on, and it's been acknowledged for the first time by the military. And we've got two, hopefully not competing, but we've got two, offices, departments that are now going to be handling the reports. So that's pretty significant. But I think the bigger thing, the midpoint that we're at, is that we've been given this awesome gift, right, of life. And you can look at it, and depending on what channel you turn to, you can see all the different colors of life. You can see the emotional aspect of life. You can see the hatred, the racism, the destructiveness, the capitalism, to a point of annihilation. And then on the other side, you see people pulling together, doing wonderful things on the community level, who treat each other as a part of their tribe. And the planet is one big tribe, And so you look at this, and then you say, okay, what is the midpoint? Well, the midpoint is what we're passing right now. And that has to do with the environment. It has to do with the climate, that we're jacking up, and this planet. And when people say we're killing our planet, I always look at that and go, God, that's the height of hubris. Yeah. We're not killing our planet. Our planet will recycle itself. It's been through much worse than what we're going to do. Yeah. Right? So here are these aliens that are saying two things, and they've been saying it since, the mid, 1900s and probably beforehand, which is, your technology is not helping you. And the second thing that they hit on more than anything is you're destroying your planet. And here are images to show you. So when I hear stuff like that, as a filmmaker, I go, how do I convey that? First of all, what does that mean when they're shown images? Where do these images come from? Is it just, here is what I'm going to project as I'm that being. I'm going to project it from my own, mental banks, or am I pulling it from some digital, library and saying, here are actual images of the future that we're showing you. So all these things you have to kind of look at, because one, you can say, yeah, they showed me images. Well, where do those images come from? Not just this is a possible future or whatever, because it can change. We've got free will, right? But if that is the case, that we're doing that, and these guys have been warning us, and we're ignoring it, if we're not going to listen to our scientists, and we're not going to listen to a superior being, it's very easy to become a fatalist and to say, God, what has to be done? And I found that there were two themes that came out of my movie, because I didn't have a theme other than knowing what story I wanted to tell. But a theme is different. A theme is, what do you want to leave the audience with, on a subconscious level and a conscious level? And what kept hammering at me over and over again is technology isn't helping you. And we're destroying our planet. We're not having respect for it. We're not treating the planet as the mother.
Can I ask, in what ways is technology not helping humanity?
You would think it's technology like fracking, right?
Yeah.
Which is, but I think it also has to do with our smartphones. I think what we're doing with checking out and not relating to people, and it's definitely hurting. You talk to any, millennial and under, my daughter's generation, and they're having issues communicating. I hear that you don't say these days, you don't say, hey, let's go out on a date. Not that anyone would say that anyway, but, and they wouldn't say hook up, hopefully, but, you'd say, hey, do you want to hang? And even that has changed to, do you want to, come over? And then you're coming over, and, I hear stories all the time of they're on each other's phones and stuff. You're on dates, you look at restaurants and stuff, those who are still, open, and they're all doing this. And so when I hear some of the UFO reports have been decreasing, I'm like, yeah, well, if you're doing this and you're walking down the street, you're not doing this. So, and the fact that everyone has a camera phone doesn't matter if you're not looking up at that. And so that, to me, I feel is the kind of hidden, I don't want to say insidious technology that we're talking about, but it definitely folds into that.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I feel like when I think back on history, if I take the clock back 30 years, that iPad was a newspaper. And, instead of going out, it was going steady or whatever, back in our parents' days. So I feel like those things are okay. I mean, like, I can understand how technology would be harmful in regards to building a nuclear weapon. Like, to me, that seems like a very destructive technological, like, I don't understand why we even have a budget for nuclear weapon in our arsenal. It just doesn't make any sense to me. How much bigger can it get? Like, how much bigger do you need to make a bomb? But I mean, so do you think this is alien? Because you've kind of hinted at that a few times. I mean, out of all the people you've interviewed and all of the stories you've heard, would you say that's your leading hypothesis?
Well, we have to define alien.
That's a good point. Okay.
Non-human.
I mean, I guess when I say alien, or you say alien, the first thing I think of is, something that comes in a craft, a typical, from another planet, we're here in peace kind of alien, or even, the Close Encounters of the Third Kind of thing, where maybe they're not as Disney friendly, I guess, when they first interact with you. I guess that would be, I mean, everything is alien that doesn't come from this planet, but I mean, that's a good question. But I think, yeah, just the normal definition of alien.
Sure. I get what you're looking for. I think, again, it's all the above, none of the above. Yeah, right. I think that interplanetary travel is going to happen. When I hear about, physics, which they've just started to kind of change a little bit, do a revision on some physics. I laugh. Again, it's hubris. the physics are the physics. That's it. It's like, oh, we don't even know how the mind works.
Yeah.
You know, we really don't. We don't know how dogs know 3 blocks away that their owner is coming home. You know, there's so much.
What gravity is.
Yeah, we have
That's
no
a big
clue.
one.
And that's a
Yeah,
big
let's
one.
call it gravitons.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't mean anything. So, and quantum theory to a degree is all theory, right? And so we're not even a type 1 species.
We're type 0.
Yeah. And so there's so much to learn, which is exciting. It's like as a kid, I used to be so into Loch Ness Monster. And I would so wanted to see it. I just wanted footage. I didn't want them to find it. You know, because then the mystery's solved and it's like, shit, that's over. Right. So same with Bigfoot, you know, right? And so I feel like they're coming from, I mean, if you were to say, you know, what is your thoughts on it? Not your belief system, what is your thoughts on it? I think it's all above. I think they're interplanetary travel. I don't think it matters what the ship is. I don't think the technology of the ship really matters to a degree. I think that it might be controlled by thought. You know, there's people that can move things, change things just by thought. An example is these people that have found these ponds that have been contaminated, and they get together 50 or 100 people, and they all throw positive energy and stuff, and it changes the crystallization. And this is documented of the water. You know, the water crystals, the particulates at a level that you can actually see with a microscope. You know, you look at the test where they've had a plant, and the plant is on one side of the room, and they take a light and they swing it back and forth, and it should just continue going back and forth, but they find that it arcs towards the plant. Yeah. Like the plant is, you know, bring it. So all of that is new and exciting, and it's not terribly new. It's been around, but as far as being able to quantify it and prove that is new. And so my feeling is that they're probably they could be coming from the planet. Definitely there's a possibility they're coming from the future. I don't subscribe to any emphatic rules. So when you say that once you've created the time machine, you can only go back to that moment, BS. If you're folding time and you can do that, like, you know, Einstein said, that can be manipulated. So I think as a doctor, my buddy, Dr. Michael Masters, you know, says, you know, and he's not the first one to come up with it, but he's the first one that really has kind of pulled in everything from all different aspects. And, you know, that makes just as much sense to me as anything else. How would they know where we're headed? You know? And then the other is, you know, the first time I came, you know, hip to this was Jacques Vallée, which is interdimensional. And we already know through the, you know, the accelerator, the collider, you know, Higgs boson collider, that we've got 11 dimensions that we've tracked so far, and there's, you know, more to come. So, you know, we're like a radio station. We're turning this reality isn't playing at one frequency, and then there'll be another one, et cetera. So they could be coming from anything. But the one thing that we have to consider is these are humanoid beings, right? Life is going to have all different flavors, as Michio Kaku says, you know, because water is so prevalent with life. Other versions of it could be a lobster, you know, could be an octopus. I mean, octopuses are the freakish thing. We don't even know how they, you know, kind of came about. So we have to consider all of that when we're looking at this, and also the fact that all of it might be true, all of it might be real. I hope that's not
no. I
not
think
answering the question. But...
No, I think you answered the question. I mean, Jane, did you have a follow-up on that?
Well, I mean, I know it could be all of the above or none of the above, but to get a little more specific, I mean, I know you brought up communion, and, you know, I know the theme, you know, in your films. What about the Greys? I mean, you know, if you were a betting person, would you put money on the Greys being real specifically, if you heard from experiencers about them?
Being real. Here's where I draw the line. I will go as far as saying I believe that gray beings have had interactions with humans. I believe the people who believe that they have.
Right.
I stop when I say I know this is true. I don't know that's true. Whereas experiencers may say they know it's true. That's their truth. Right. So, until I see one of the gray beans. My girlfriend going by. It was like, that was just like Bigfoot walking by.
Yeah, that was like great timing.
Footage. I got to slow it down. We should analyze it.
Share this video, everybody. We just caught Bigfoot.
Yeah. My feeling is that it seems like I believe these. I've got a lot of good friends who are experiencers, and I believe them. And so I think at some level this is actually happening. Again, you can't fake PTSD. So I believe that. Get your cameras out. Oh yeah. So I believe that that is occurring. What's interesting is when I look at this, I go, hey, you can't just, in other words, every time I would look at one aspect of the phenomenon, I would grab it and I would hold on to it and I would forcibly move it to the side and look at it from another angle. Like I was interviewing Mike Masters and I said, how come there's no reptilian hybrids? How come there's no praying mantis hybrids? There's only the grays that are predominantly reported. What is that about? And so there's these little clues, these little things that are left behind. And you go, okay, why is that? And Michael's argument would be because if we are becoming the grays, right, in the future, and we are. I mean, if you track what we look like when we were Cro-Magnons, where we're headed, less hair. Once we stopped having to, chew meat off of bones and stuff, our jaws made space for our skulls to get bigger, and our eyes are getting bigger, and our brains got bigger because we no longer were moving like this. We were looking up, and so that brings everything up and expands area in which the body can grow. And so it seems like we could be heading that direction, right? And so that's super intriguing to me. And so I look at that and I go, okay. And he says, so if that's the case, and that is us, we can't mate with primates, which share like 99.9% of our, our makeup. And so if that can't happen, then how do we expect a creature from another planet that's its own species to be able to mate with us? Now, the only caveat to this is maybe they've got technology where they can, manipulate. But keep in mind, the way that the story goes, the agenda of these aliens, is it's taken them a few generations in order to dial it in.
Well, I mean,
right?
How do you turn a wolf into a pug? Like that's what we did.
Within that community, yeah, within animal, but there's no such thing as a tiger wolf or tiger Pomeranian that I'm aware of. So it is within a certain species that you have to be able to do that. So you go, wow, okay, so that's interesting. So that may mean that that they could be us, that they share that. And if they're living with us in another dimension, but in the same planet with the same makeup, then, what does that mean? Does that mean that that we are related to them? So that's intriguing. But again, why not the reptilians? Why not the the praying mantis? So, and they seem to be working in concert, by the way. And some will say that the praying mantis seem to be the leaders of this, because they have been, known to be a part of the crew. So
the Whitley Strieber communion. I didn't read the book. I assume the praying mantis is in the book too. I know. I'm worse. I'm the worst with books. I graze them and I read, a page here and then if it's a story, if it's yeah, I could probably do that.
It is a movie. You can watch the movie.
But the movie's great. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So the praying mantis and the gray imagery in that is.
Whitley has a pop-up book, right? Communion. There's a pop-up book.
Oh my gosh, that's
no, there's not.
No, there's
not. I was like, I would have believed that. Not that Whitley Strieber would have made it.
Oh my goodness.
But people should absolutely make that book. We should have a whole series of pop-up books for all the encounters.
Well, yeah.
I love this idea so much, like a whole kids line.
Yeah, let's cut this out of the podcast, and then we'll go off and make it.
For real, it's
Exactly.
like too good of an idea.
Well, let me ask you this, because your girlfriend did walk by a few times. I mean, how did she find this aspect of your life? Was this a difficult part to explain to people, whether it be loved ones or friends and family? And how do you do it?
Yeah.
When people ask about what you do for a living, for example.
Right. Well, I'm an independent filmmaker first and foremost. And because I've worked in all different genres, one could easily, extrapolate that I'm an indie filmmaker, a filmmaker, period. And so when it comes to, my family and friends and stuff, they know that I'm currently working on this project, though I've had interest since I was a kid. And I've been kind of an armchair UFO researcher since, that age. And so it's just an extension of one of the many things, that I do. But there's something, for me, very personal about this. I've never done a movie more than, it's never taken more than, a year. You shoot it, you have like a month or two, maybe three,
right.
If it's a big project. And then you're editing and it's out and it, goes to market and everything. But, 3.5 years. And by the time it comes out, it'll be 4 years. And I remember when I was meeting with Fox, and he was taking 8 or 9 years. It took him to do his,
right.
all the research for his thing. And I go, God, this doesn't seem very sustainable. And we were agreeing, about that. But it doesn't matter. It's this thing that just feels like, again, I'm, being dragged along. But when I talk to it with my, like with Allie, my girlfriend, she knows that I'm a grounded person. And she knows that I, initially approached this as a writer. And as it became more and more in doing my research, more and more evident that they were credible people. And I've, to be honest, I've dragged her out on some of the shoots. Yeah. I've, a few times put her on camera. We interviewed Diana Pasulka. And so, we COVID restrictions and stuff. And so, she works for Disney and so she's kind of adjacent in the business. And so
Diana Pasulka works for Disney?
No. Sorry, my girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and so so she's seen this whole process. And so it's been easier for her because she's witnessed me going from someone who was intrigued by this notion of doing this thing to, wow, there's tangibles here. Look at that. Holy shit.
Yeah.
And so she's seen that journey, and occasionally I'll say, hey, take a look at this, or let's talk about this. And so she's been a good, barometer as well. She has no problem telling me, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't reek of any sense of reality. But my family's been pretty, cool about it. Some of them have seen some of the stuff I've done, and it's interesting because the takeaway for them is, oh wow, oh, I didn't know that was the case. Because their version of this is only what Hollywood gives them.
Right.
And so when they see this stuff and they see the people that I'm bringing in, Harvard professors and stuff, it's a whole different, ball game. And so that's been kind of easier to show them that. But there are some friends who are like, all right, man, have fun. Maybe they'll watch it, when it's done. They just can't go there because it feels too much like a cult or conspiracy thing.
Right. Would you say this is your either favorite or best film that you've worked on so far?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I have these other projects that I want to do after this, and some of them are sci-fi and they're alien related, right? And I'm looking forward to that, and I'm anticipating that that'll be something that I do after this. But at the same time, I'm already missing the connection to something greater than me. I'm already nostalgic over the fact that this has been something that I feel like I've been lucky to be a part of, and all the people who have been so generous with their time and their emotions during the interviews, I'm super grateful for. So I feel like this is going to reverberate whatever I do beyond this. Will I do another documentary in this space? I don't. I don't know. There is another thing that's kind of been creeping up in tandem with this. But, you know, I tried to just say, you know, you tell me where I should go. Yeah. So.
Well, if you ever need another set of eyeballs on it before you release it, let me know. I'll be more than happy to watch it and give you some critique, some notes if you want. Who the hell am I? But, you know, I don't know. I figured I'd throw that out there.
Well, you're an experiencer. You're someone who's interested in this. So, you know, everyone's opinion matters, you know.
Yeah. Have you come up with a title for it yet?
Yes, but I can't
divulge what that is. Keep that one close to the vest. All right. No, that's fair. Well, we did have some questions from the audience, but before we get to that, Jane, I felt like I might have cut you off there for a question. Did you have any other thoughts?
Oh no, but I have another like pebble in the shoe question, because we have to go back to the original UFO abduction, because I know that there was specifically that video was circulating around with a Japanese TV show that was talking about it being real and reacting to it. Not gonna let the
Japanese show thing go.
I'm definitely gonna go. But they actually talked. You have to share that story, because you actually talked to this. Didn't you talk to these Japanese TV anchors?
Yeah, well, they weren't anchors. It was a news,
right?
Like a variety news show.
News producers who reached out to me right after the Encounters Fox show aired. And they said, look, we want to do a story on this. And again, David Morton brokered the deal. And they wanted to interview me, and they wanted to interview a couple of my cast members. And they were going to pay me, you know, to use some of the footage and license it. And so I met with them and was supposed to do an interview with them. And they interviewed two of my actors, and then that was it. And I showed up at the hotel to get interviewed and to get my perspective on making this thing, et cetera. And they said, oh, sorry, there's no time. We have enough. We're good. We'll call you if you have any questions. And I'm like, okay, I don't need to be interviewed. Cool. So then I see the show. And what they've done is they got my two actors and they had them portray themselves and talk about, you know, like in Tommy's case, how it was being returned by the aliens. And, you know, the little girl in it is now grown up. And so, you know, they flew her out to interview her and put them up in hotels and stuff. It was nuts. And so they did this whole thing behind my back. And so when it aired, I was pretty pissed off because, you know, this wasn't the conceit of this. And it was perpetuating, it was a bold-faced lie. And so there was nothing I could do about it. They had the footage. They're in Japan. I'm not here. But from then on, I refused to do any interviews. And I didn't. There was a blackout period from that point on until Alejandro Rojas and Karen Brard and I connected. And you know, there was some convincing to go out and say, hey, whatever you think that, you know, first of all, whatever you think the UFO, you know, community is like, I can assure you it's not. And second of all, there are people there who, you know, you'll control the narrative, and that's what I needed to hear. And so, yeah, so there you go. So that's how that came about. Yeah. And when you see me being interviewed there, that's not my interview. They took that from another thing and cut that in. I've never been interviewed by aliens or Asians.
Not yet. Not yet.
Well, actually, the first question I wanted to ask you, but we just started rumbling right into it, was, are you a vampire? Because you don't age.
I heard that rumor.
Ah. You don't age, man. Like, I'm looking at you in 89, and I'm like, all right, yeah, looks young, but, you know. And then I'm looking at you in the 90s. I'm like, yeah, he's starting to look better. And now I'm looking at you now. I'm like, damn, you're a stud. Like, you're a silver fox.
What's the skin routine? Water?
Yeah, water and human blood.
This is embalming fluid.
Oh, okay.
I'm embalmed. And so this is how I'm able to. That's very kind. It's my genetics, maybe being half Italian or something. I think mostly it's to be honest, not trying to be funny, but I think it's kind of my immaturity. I've kept myself, you know, as childlike as I can, and I don't want to grow up. But as far as anything else, I don't know. That's yeah, that's something I was born with. I'm expecting, at some point it'll be like I'll wake up the next day and whatever.
I'm imagining it'll happen something similar to like Clint Eastwood. I just I don't know when it happened, but it was late in the game. But then all of a sudden, his pants are coming up to his nipples. I'm like, oh, he's old. He's
Dude,
really
I
old
worked with
now.
him on the last Dirty Harry film.
Yeah,
and even then, he's got some magic sauce.
Yeah,
maybe it's being a fellow Gemini or something. But anyway, he's amazing. But now he's a little bit whacked. So whatever.
It's funny. It's funny.
We should all be so lucky.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cosmo Warrior Zero had a question. And they might have left because I can't remember what part of the world they're in, but they might be sleeping now. But hopefully when he replays this, he'll be able to see. Maybe ask Dean about Spielberg's aborted Hopkinsville inspired Night Skies film that eventually became the basis for E.T. Do you know anything about that?
This is for you. I do.
Yeah.
After Spielberg made Close Encounters of the Third Kind, he was, again, in the rabbit hole thanks to J. Allen Hynek, and he decided that he was going to do the Kelly Hopkinsville story, which, for your peeps that don't know, that was where a family in Kentucky, outside of Kentucky, I think it was, were basically attacked. An assault happened with all these goblin-type alien beings, and there was a shootout and everything else. I definitely borrowed from it when I did my original, UFO / the McPherson Tape project, and so he set about doing that and developing the story. And I think a script might have been written, maybe one or two, but he found himself gravitating towards this one alien, which was the nice alien. I think his name was even Puck. And which was an extension of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I'm not sure, but anyway, he found that this character was much more interesting, and so he decided to abort all the other stuff and just follow this character. And that, along with his own childhood, where his mother, kind of was also raising, again, 3 kids, and so it's taken a lot from his childhood, and so. I think he merged those two, and that's how that, came about. I really do want Spielberg to do a third Alien movie, and I don't consider War of the Worlds.
You don't consider that an
the
Alien?
End of AI as part of the Spielberg canon.
Yeah.
It has to be an original story that he tells, and it has to be an extension of the one he's already told, right? And so I feel like. I remember I was really upset after E.T. came out because I'm like, God, if the aliens are going to show up, man, now's the time. They've got some really good PR going on with Spielberg.
Right?
They're sweet. They can make plants grow and bring a broken family, heal it, and everything. And so,
but would you like to see a direct sequel to either one of those two films, or would you like to see the completely original thing?
Completely original thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and if I had my way about it, if you're asking what I would like, I want to write it.
The closest thing, I don't know if I have a son, so I'm in the demographic for all these movies, but the Ghostbusters Afterlife, even though it's not aliens, I feel like that's the closest where I got like to an ET kind of. Ghostbusters was great. But yeah, I would love that from Spielberg. Another Spielberg alien story, but different. Cause can't redo E.T. I mean, they did redo E.T., but I like the original puppetry.
Did they redo E.T.?
Well, they
they
re-released it with like the digital, and I hated that stuff.
Well, they took the shotguns out of the agent's hands when they fly onto the bicycles. I'm like, why did they do that? Anyway.
I have a project that I'm that I've been working on that I'm kind of hoping to do an extension since Spielberg won't do it. So you're going to have maybe a crappy my crappy version of it, but it's definitely fallen the lines of that with a little mix of All the President's Men. So Yes,
awesome.
one of the questions I want to ask you, maybe if we got time, we can answer it. But I'm going to get Preston's question in here real quick. I mean, you kind of answered this one already, but does Dean feel that the McPherson Tape inspired the found footage genre and the Blair Witch Project? The version that aired on UPN terrified me as a child.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't mean to terrify your childhood. I get emails and stuff from people saying that I sleep with the lights on. And one woman said she almost had a miscarriage.
Oh gosh.
And I always say, what are the kids doing watching this? Where are the parents?
Oh,
You know, during this, because it says these, you know, there was a disclaimer that Paramount, not me, UPN put on, which is, you know, this program contains, you know, violence and often disturbing images. So parents were like, yeah, bring them in. So,
but there wasn't a drop of blood in there, right? It wasn't like gory.
No. There was no blood,
Yeah.
Which, you know, can be worse, you know, psychological. But anyway, so the question was, do I feel like they borrowed from me? I don't think so. My feeling is that, with a couple exceptions, my feeling is that if you were, you know, in the underground subcult, you knew about the movie. And so did Blair Witch know about the movie, the filmmakers? I don't think so. Did Paranormal? Maybe they did, but I don't think that was their idea. I really dug Paranormal, you know, especially the first one. And I found its own kind of, you know, version. I don't know if they, you know, saw it. I doubt that they did, to be honest. However, I do know that with Cloverfield, I know that they saw my remake, and a year and a half later, and they didn't see it till a few years after it aired. But I know for sure that JJ's partner saw it and spoke with him and everything, and then all of a sudden, a year and a half later, we have Cloverfield, which starts out with this, you know, kind of
found footage, the
same thing. It starts
birthday party,
It's birthday party type thing, same thing. And then if you look at M. Night's Signs, one could argue, and I let the internet fight my battles for me, because a lot of, you know, the fanboys, the fangirls will say, hey, this is bullshit, blah, blah, blah. But if you look at it, it's like, you know, the single parent with the 3 kids, the whole deal, even the alien climbing up through the upstairs, you know, blah, blah, blah. So maybe that was inspired, even though that's not a found footage film. But you know, hey, my whole career has been, you know, inspired as a filmmaker, a craftsman, through other filmmakers. So, but, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think that the Paramount, I think it's called Unknown Dimensions, Paramount Plus documentary, kind of lays that all out, how the timeline played out and everything. And so,
yes, to answer your question, yes, he thinks they steal from him.
Yes, and I want my residuals.
And he wants his residuals. I guess, well, let me ask this real quick. What are, I mean, you know, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I think, is obviously number one in anybody's book on this filmology of these types of films. But what other films would you put in that category of Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Just out of curiosity.
Sure. Arrival. That's a good question. Because there haven't really been many. I'm always, what I look for in a film about UFOs is I look for awe. The wonderment.
What did you think of District 9?
Oh, great.
Love that flick.
Yeah, that goes in my top 5 for that genre. Absolutely, that's a good call. Yeah, I forgot about that one.
I was actually writing a script at the time. I was living in New York City, and I was like, man, how cool would it be if these huge motherships just popped up over DC, New York, you know, India, Russia, and they just sat there for 7 years. They didn't open the doors. They didn't talk to anybody. They didn't communicate. They just sat there for 7 years over major cities. And then after 7 years, they finally, that's the end of the movie. You never get to find out what they want, but what would happen to society? What would happen in, you know, what kind of conversations would they be having in the Oval Office? What kind of conversations would they be having in the Vatican? How would society deal with this issue? And what would he do after 7 years to not get an answer or acknowledgement that as to why the hell you're even here? I thought would have been
Yeah,
pretty cool.
the
And
Vatican's
District 9
interesting.
kind of did that a little bit.
Yeah, the Vatican's interesting. I have a little bit of a mini mic drop there with regards to the Vatican in my documentary. Yeah, District 9 was great. I enjoyed just the spectacle of it. I thought, Independence Day, the first one, was good. Certainly, Aliens was great. I mean, if you get into that. But
The
my
Abyss.
top three, The Abyss. Yeah. Though I did like the Michael Biehn character, the Navy SEAL guy who starts to unravel. I thought that was more compelling than seeing this water thing go through. I thought that was a great storyline. I liked 2001: Space Odyssey, man.
Oh yeah.
That had awe. I can only
that
think
had
of
a
two
lot of
films that have created awe, which is Close Encounters and 2001. Nothing else I can't think of.
You know what's a film that actually I just recently watched that came real close that I got Spielberg vibes off of? It's an Amazon movie called The Still of Night.
It's not called The
Not
Still
heard
of
of
Night.
that.
Or The Vast of Night. The Vast of Night.
The
Excuse
Vast
me.
of Night.
The Vast of Night.
Yeah.
Have you seen that one?
I did.
What'd you think?
I love the milieu. I love the idea of a small town. I mean, I love, 50s or 60s, taking that and mixing it. I really love the elements that I feel that it totally, delivered. Not where I want it to go anyway. But I applaud what they did, and I really like the way that it was shot. So I did enjoy it, and it gave me hope for more films to come like that.
Yeah.
That there's a space for us. So yeah.
Well, I just thought from a cinematic standpoint, cinematography on it was A+. I felt like they were one A-list actor away from that being a phenomenal movie. And I think the older woman in the film who they go to her house, if that's like, I don't know, Nicole Kidman, I think that movie goes to a whole nother level. But I watched it, I was like, man,
Nicole
this
Kidman
is
playing
really
Lucy
good
in that role. Absolutely.
That was I think the worst movie I saw in December was that Lucy. It just showed that I was like, man, Aaron Sorkin can write, but he cannot direct. Like,
I got an Aaron Sorkin story for you.
Oh, do you? Yeah, share it.
Yeah. Okay. So, when you go to the ArcLight, which is now shut down, unfortunately.
Yeah,
in Hollywood.
which was honestly, after that happened, I was like, okay, maybe it's time to move because it was a
heartbreak. Well,
a staple. The dome.
The dome is going to survive, thank God. That's definitely going to survive. The new owners are going to keep that alive. So, what was great about the ArcLight when it first came out was it was the first theater that I was aware of that had assigned seating. So I'm kind of, I'm fanatical about getting the right seat, either in the middle.
Yeah.
Or like at the Grove. If you've been to the Grove, there's those balcony seats that no one knows that they're balconies. They just see them off to the side and go, I don't want those. And you'd get those and you're great. And there's the balcony that you have at the Dome, right? The first, that one balcony. So I got my seats, and my ex-wife, wife at the time is there with my daughter, and we have our seats perfectly in the middle to see this film. I don't even know what the film, I don't even remember what it is because of what happened. And so we're walking to our row, and we're going there, and there's this family that's there. And I say to them, I go, oh, you're in our seats. And they said, well, and they said, well, come on, there's hardly anyone in the theater. So why don't you, guy, you just sit over here. What's the big deal? Yeah. And I'm like, well, because we had ordered these seats. These are our seats. And he goes, man, seriously? And he starts giving me grief about it. And as I'm talking to him, I'm realizing this is Aaron Sorkin.
Oh my gosh.
Of course it is.
What a dick. I have no problem saying that. What a dick.
That is a
dick.
That's a dick move.
That's a dick move. In LA, in LA at the Dome, that's a dick move. I'm sorry, you're right. Like, the Dome is,
well, it wasn't the Dome,
Tarantino,
but it was this. It was one of the big theaters in there, which are beautiful.
Yeah,
and there was that sweet spot.
Yeah, well, they all of those theaters in that theater have a sweet spot, and that's what I loved about that. Like, they were designed to have that sweet spot.
You know it.
And it's the kind of movie theater, Jane, that the ushers will walk you to your seat. Before the movie is presented, I remember for the Hateful Eight, they had the I can't remember the composer that did the music for that Tarantino film, but a very
Enrico Morricone.
Morricone, yes, and they had the overture of the entire film play before the film.
That's cool.
And the usher comes out and announces that you're going to be listening to this overture. It's a 15-minute overture. If you want to go get some snacks or you want to go do this, blah blah blah. Like, it is an experience, and so yeah, that's a dick move.
It's premiere, and so what happened was, I again thinking bad for the team. I'm looking at this. I'm going, this is Aaron Sorkin. And so then this experience now jumps a level to surreal. Yeah. The other thing I'm thinking is, at the time I'm going, God, I could really use a job in doing what on one of his shows. And I'm going, maybe if I don't put, maybe we'll bond during the film. And I'm thinking about all these things. Yeah. And by the time that happens, he's already dismissed me and he's sitting down. And we're sitting down and I'm right next to him. And I'm kind of like, and I don't know which way to go, because, I'm all about injustice and bullies. And this is really pissing me off. And so so that's why I don't remember what the hell the film was. But that was that's my
I mean, I'm sure at some point you were also probably thinking, well, do I want to work for somebody who would do this?
Yeah.
Like,
he should be canceled.
Dick. Oh my God.
He should be canceled.
He should be canceled. That's hilarious. Okay. Another hilarious comment from Now I Become Death says, has there ever been any alien abductions in the ghetto? Which is a funny question. I mean,
isn't that an Elvis song? In the ghetto.
Aliens
in the ghetto.
Yeah, I believe it is. Brent Hornick had a question. Could they be moving through a hyperspace dimension where time doesn't mean anything? Travel great distances instantaneously. That's what I think. What do you think about that idea, Dean?
I think Mr. Hornick, I agree. I think that again, if these beings are traveling, like, say, in the astral plane, because a lot of times people will say that they see dead ones, if you will. I see dead people with them. And so if that's the case, that they're seeing dead people, then maybe they're traveling at the astral plane and anything goes there. Right. So, yeah.
Right on. And then we had, one last question for Bob Marley. Dean, what do you think of NASA hiring Catholic priests to help people adjust to aliens? I don't even know if that's true, to be honest with you.
No,
that was a headline, but I never.
It was a headline, but I'm pretty sure that was a bogus headline, and that this actually didn't happen. NASA confirmed that this was bullshit. But let's just say it did happen.
It could happen.
I guess.
Well, I don't know. NASA. Yeah. I don't know. Would NASA be the one that would hire? I could. Maybe the UFO office.
Maybe
we'll do this.
Yeah, there's no protocol, guys, for this. I've checked with NASA, by the way. SETI really doesn't have it. So I doubt that the Vatican, has one. Though you'll see in my documentary what they do have. But anyway, yeah.
I can't wait for this documentary. I can't wait.
Vatican stuff sounds interesting.
I mean, we got Vatican 3-part series. So. I'm hoping it's either Amazon or Netflix, where I could maybe binge it, or we'll see. I'm excited. I mean, you're at the. I'm assuming you're at the selling, so you're trying to find distributors and or a network that'll pick it up. So I'm thinking anywhere between 8 to 12 months before we see it.
Yeah, ideally, it's sold. It should sell this year, and then depending on what their schedule is and everything. Yeah. Sometimes, if it's a streamer, they may want to tweak it, whatever. Who knows? I've sold things where it's gone right away uncut. We just take it and run with it. So you never know. But, the good news is that everything that I set out to do, or they set out to do, I think was achieved in good part. Is this the part of the podcast with the music where we dance?
Yep, it sure is. Yep.
I love Das Tapes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's Das Tapes, my friend's band. I always love to say they're the only people who do music for our show.
It's perfect.
And I was like, I always like to say, how you always have a friend that comes up to you, oh man, you got to check out my friend's band, they're awesome. And then you check out the friend's band after hounding, and then you go and you're like, oh, they're not awesome. They're just a very average garage band. These guys are actually awesome. This is actually awesome.
They sound great.
Oh, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
I love the vibe. My daughter works in the music industry, and I'll sometimes go, what should I be listening to? And then she just drops these things. It's like, oh, wow.
Yeah, this is a fun one. Well, if you want to check them out, their Bandcamp link is in the description below, where you can check out their album for free. Dean Alioto, I cannot appreciate you enough, man. This was a really fun conversation. I loved your film perspective on this phenomenon, and I cannot wait to see this documentary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this should be a lot of fun. You've hinted at some mic drop moments, so I'm looking forward to it. Before you get out of here, please tell everyone where they can interact with you and look forward to either the film or where they can find your work.
Sure. I'm on Instagram under Dean Alioto. I also have a Facebook page, Dean Alioto. And if they want to see the original film, which was actually going to get a theatrical release before COVID hit 2 weeks before, it was pulled out of the Alamo Draft House.
Yeah. I've been meaning to go to the Alamo Draft House. I was going to take my girlfriend a couple weeks ago to go see Spider-Man, but it was sold out. So we ended up going to the AMC instead.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. So they were going to do a rollout of the film, and instead of that, because of that, they released it Blu-ray. But you can get it Blu-ray. Just buy it on Amazon. It's on Amazon. Shudder has it, but Shudder doesn't have the best. The version that has all of the behind the scenes. I did a whole new director's commentary. I pulled out stuff that no one has seen before, footage and clips. I've got the segment from the Encounters thing that started all. It's loaded. It's pretty jam packed, and it's like really cheap as well.
I would love to see a director's. I would love to see a director's cut of you in front of like a green screen in front of the Japanese interview, going, "This is bullshit." I love it. Dean, Ryan Sprague says he loves you. Before you get out
right
here.
Back at you.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much for coming by. I hope you consider coming back, especially when this movie gets close to dropping. Man, we'd love to help you promote it, and I can't wait to watch it and critique it.
I will.
We'll critique it. That's for sure. We always critique stuff because that's how the show started. It was supposed to be a show that critiques and reviews films having to do with the UFO and UAP topic. So,
really?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's how it started, and then it morphed into a whole nother thing. Now we do all sorts of stuff.
Well, I appreciate the levity that you're infusing this, because we need more of that. And your energy and everything, your enthusiasm is infectious. And I think that, when I saw you on the podcast, and I've caught since then with Martin, and I've caught some other podcasts and stuff, this is a really fun show. The format and bringing Jane in was brilliant. So you've got your.
Yeah, that was an easy decision with Jane. She's amazing. But all right, Dean, we'll let you get out of here, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Sure. All right. Peace out, guys. Thank you. This is really fun.
Thank you. That
was
awesome.
He's such a good sport. When I mean, I didn't even tell you, but when I interviewed him back in the day, like I really grilled him about everything, and he is so awesome. And it was fun to talk about other topics like astral projection, and that's a good conversation.
Yeah, well, I'm like I said, I'm just super excited to see this film that he's working on. I mean, a 3.5 year labor of love. Usually I'm always worried about UFO films. I'm always like, oh man, honestly, it's one of the few genres where it's either hit or absolute miss. I feel like it's never in between. So, I mean, I feel like it's a hard genre to make a film for.
Mm-hmm. Well, you always risk showing that one video or that one case that gets debunked, and it's maybe just one small sliver, right, of your whole 3 years of work or documentary, especially if he's talking to a lot of experiencers.
Well, the thing that gave me a little cover, he says, is it's a science documentary. So I'm interested to see what makes it, a solid science documentary. I have a feeling we're going to hear from Michio Kaku. I didn't even get to my question. I had a question about him from Michio, because everybody in the chats knows how much I love Michio Kaku. But there's also some good questions, like, is he really doing science on UAPs, or is he kind of just playing the part of this, television scientist, with sound bites, with good sound bites. So I was like, it's a legit question. I don't think he's in a lab actually crunching numbers and looking at the UAP topic. Maybe he used to be. Maybe he used to be. Maybe he does on his free time. Who knows? Maybe, but man, that'd be one guest we absolutely definitely going to try and get in this year to come. But Jane, before we get out of here, please tell everybody where they can find you and what you're working on this week.
Yeah, you can just search UFO Jane. I'll be posting tonight top 15 moments of the year. So some scoops I kind of forgot about and some funny moments from our channel. If you haven't subscribed to my channel and you don't know what my YouTube's about, this might be it's a best of video. This would be a good idea of kind of the vibe over on my YouTube. So that's popping tonight. Is that a thing to say? Popping?
Yeah, it's popping. Absolutely. Yes. Does not age you at all, Jane. Want to say thank you to Cosmo Warrior, Now That It Becomes Death, Brent Hornick, Bob Marley, Ryan Sprague, Night Gazer, Aaron Desario, obviously for moderating the chat, UAP Atora, Rodrigo, all of you guys that made Bottled Water, all of you guys that made this show a lot of fun today. Thank you so much for being here in the chat. Want to say thank you to Das Tapes. Again, their SoundCloud link is in the description below. Want to say thank you to Jane and Rather. I'm sure he'll be back here by Friday, hopefully, fingers crossed. And by the way, guys, there's not going to be any Singularity Lab for the month of February. Mike's going to take off the month. He's moving into his new house. He's setting everything up. There's a lot of stuff going down. So just FYI on that front. Thank you for the Patreon listeners out there. The Patreon support is through the roof. Thank you guys so damn much for supporting the Patreon. Thank you for the super chat today. I want to say hello to Bree and Jamie, who'll be on, they'll be on the show this month. So in the next week or two. So that'll be fun. What else? Check out the merch links, check out Jane's links, check out Dean's links, all in the description below. Thank you all so damn much for coming aboard, getting weird with us here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. That is Jane Kyle, aka UFO Jane. Until Friday, you guys, who, by the way, we're going to be having, who do we have on Friday, Jane?
Oh, shoot.
We have, that's okay. I'll pull it up right here. I want to make sure I get his name. I believe it's Sean Webb. Yep, Sean Webb, who's got the TikTok channel of Mind Hacking Happiness.
Oh, that's right.
Who blew up our John Ramirez video. So he'll be here on Friday, so don't miss out that episode. Ring the bell, share, like, subscribe. I love you all. Till next time. Peace.
Bye, guys.
I'm going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.